We touched on the environmental services briefly, so the next question has to do with the environmental services department. They, quote, protect public health and safety and maintain and increase sustainability of the community. So to do this, regulations are written and enforced that some say infringe on customers' property rights. What is your philosophy on the balance of regulation a city can do relative to individual property rights as guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment? And what are the limits on that? Mr. Sun, we'll start with you.
Every citizen should have a right. Is it really right for the people? We should respect the rights of this property owner, and we shouldn't be just because we're the government, we're the big dogs. We shouldn't take the rights away from the people. We should work with the people. Also, we need to keep their rights to have that right, and keep that individual keep their rights of as property owner. Thank you.
Mr. Wilder?
I think, Jim, I believe the individuals and the property owners have rights, as Mr. Sung was saying, and as I've mentioned. With regards to the environmental services, I think there's always a challenge. We as a community don't want our neighbors to have 14-inch grass and 20-inch grass and limbs that are hanging over the streets and the sidewalks and things of that nature. So there is a balance to play, and I think all of us who live here have agreed to the ordinances in general, at least the general intent of them for the most case. And so I think that where the council gets involved is to make sure that that balance stays in place, that the staff doesn't get too overly aggressive, and that the individuals don't not be in alignment with the rules and regulations in place.
Mr. Babbitt?
Yeah, I think it's right. It's a balance ultimately. We need to have a balance between property owner rights and ultimately the mission of environmental services. Health, safety, and the well-being of the community, right? And ensuring that one property owner doesn't infringe on the rights of the other property owner, right? Kind of serving in that capacity. And that's where I draw the line, right? I mean, as long as environmental services is there and upholding ordinances and everything else with respect to the health and safety of the neighborhood and the well-being of each other's right to coexist with one another, I think that's where you draw the line. As a council, I agree, it's all about budgeting, ensuring that we're not over-allocating money there that ultimately is spent unwisely.
Okay, then, I believe I butchered your name, so it's pronounced Feifel?
File.
Fine, sorry. Mr. Feifel.
It's okay, you've probably had the same experience yourself. Yes, again, with property rights, one thing that does happen though in any city, especially a city of Carrollton's size and age, is that there are property owners who have disregard for their neighbors. And environmental services is there to ensure that your property values are protected with high weeds and other types of ordinances that are enforced. And yes, sometimes they can be excessive, but again, it's looking out for the neighborhood and the neighbors. In my time on the Construction Appeals Board, I saw many different instances of people that didn't want to or could not take care of their own properties, and they needed to be reminded of what their obligations were as a homeowner and as a taxpayer, not only to their own property but to their neighbors.
Okay, I think I'd like to revisit this. I think we all agree that the high weeds and the falling down structures and the limbs is probably not the issue. The issue is, for an example, city board thinks that solar panels don't look good on the road. And so they shouldn't be visible from anywhere. The city board decides that they should have the say over what your fence looks like. Not that it's falling down or that it's a danger, what it looks like. So the comment, I think, on the limits, comment on where you think the limits are relative to those types of things. And we all agree, again, on the weeds and the houses falling down and the danger stuff. But this is, I think, the area that we're in now in our country and in our state is the overreach of government indeed, where they've gone past that part about the health and safety. So comment a little bit on where you think the limits are and how you as a councilman would try to rein that in.
You want me to take that one?
Yeah, you can start.
All right. Well, in particular, when you say board, you're talking about planning and zoning, and that was one that we took on. It was presented to us by staff. It was going to go to council, and it, as typically as those are, is the board. In that case, the Planning and Zoning Commission makes recommendations to council as a buffer to give oversight, and council makes final deliberations and determinations. And there it is the staff seeing the trend of solar panels, wind turbines, and those type of things, and providing some oversight to make sure that it doesn't get out of hand, primarily to look out for property values and corridors and the like that can affect not only business but also the property values.
So, but doesn't that kind of open the door for, if I decide, and I'm on the commission, and I decide that this or that's going to hurt property values, doesn't that kind of open the door for really impeding on people's property rights by saying, well, you can't do that because we think it's going to hurt property values? That's the area we're trying to get to. Where is that limit? Who gets to decide that for the good of the collective, we're not going to allow you to do whatever?
The limit is determined by the efforts of the council and the reaction of the residents. If council is too reactive to events in the marketplace and just, okay, 5 years after the proliferation of solar panels and wind turbines and things such as that nature, that all of a sudden begin to become a blight on the community for whatever reason, whether they're overused or they get put out and they're not maintained and what have you, then the council is in a situation where they're being reactive and you're trying to control something that's out of control. And that was the reason an ordinance such as that was brought forth, to curtail and provide some guidance just to as it moves forward, because it is an emerging technology, and to be aware, just as the e-cigarettes and those other things that come forward, is to understand and acknowledge that they need to be controlled before they get out of hand and affect people outside one particular neighbor's property rights.
Okay. I didn't mean to get hung up on the solar panel. That just happens to be one I happen to know about. So, Mr. Babbitt.
No, that's fine. I think that we have too much of our city agenda oftentimes being run through planning and zoning. It's clearly one of the most powerful commissions that we have at the city level, right? I think that we need to really turn back to the grassroots, right? Back to the neighborhoods, I'd love for the Neighborhood Advisory Council to actually have more power than planning and zoning at times, only because of this type of issue. I can almost assure you that as a neighborhood, we're far more in tune with what's happening with the solar panels and other items within one person's yard versus the next than the Planning and Zoning Committee is, right? So let's have less regulation from a planning and zoning perspective, and more community members at the grassroots level figuring out how to get along and make things work.
Mr. Wiley?
All right, thank you, Jim. I think I struggle with the corridor beautification efforts, and that's probably known by anyone who's watched the work session in which we've discussed it. And I did struggle with that particular ordinance that you are just bringing up. I will give credit to the council, because we had a couple of us on the other side of the issue. We went 4 to 6 months in talking about that ordinance before we passed it. I ended up voting for it in the end. I thought I was going to vote against it for 5 months or however long it went. But I supported it because we made quite a few alterations as we got to the end, especially in regards to the collection and harvesting of rainwater and how much we're allowing them to do, because we started at 40 gallons and you had to get a permit from that point forward. And I felt that was unfair, because you couldn't get a 40-gallon tank at Home Depot or Lowe's. So we increased that substantially, and among other things, and then the solar panels, some changes we made there. But it is a struggle that I have, Jim. The other thing I want to mention is the final say of the council. The check comes with us in the end, and that's why I urged in my opening statements accountability. Y'all have to keep us accountable. I mean, yes, I'm going to be as accountable as I can be to y'all, but you also have a role to play. The final check is with us, the council. So hopefully I answered the question, Jim.
Okay. Mr. Sun?
Can you rephrase the
Yeah,
question?
I know we kind of wandered around a bit as well. The question had to do with where is the limits on the power of government to regulate private property in the areas we've been talking about. We're not talking about the tall grass and the health and safety, but more in the areas of, I think somebody mentioned beautification and those types of things, where they're imposing on property rights to make this overall reach. So where's the limits? How do you control those limits?
Well, I mean, that's a very tough question, the limit. Where do you put that limit? It's, everybody has, the beauty is only in the eye of the beholder. So where do you put that on the limit? So, I mean, I'll say, hire some expert in this area of the field, because we're not experts. We need to have some sort of a practicality and what is reasonable. So understand where we can reach the limits, and at the same time, what is best for the city of Carrollton. It has to be good for the city of Carrollton. If not, we have to look alternatives. So to reach that limit, we have to have a forum, reach out to people. Where do you want it? How do you want it? What is the people want? So with that understanding, with the issues, we come to the experts. Experts can draw diagrams how it needs to be, what the limits should be. Therefore, we can come to that conclusion, and we could go from there, reach out to people and solve the issues where the limit is.